Perfectionism, dangerous. The blaming thing in victim mentality, highly problematic. I agree and I acknowledge that, and that's why these things are toxic. But victim mentality could also just be an expression of someone that's not used to being heard. Welcome to episode number 5 of the Ordinary Connection podcast. Once again, you are with me, Keegan, your host. And today we are going to be focusing on another 2 toxic traits. Okay, the first one that we're going to focus on is going to be perfectionism, or technically, we're first going to focus on victim mentality, and then after that, we're going to focus on perfectionism. Okay, like always, today we unfortunately are not going to be doing the incense thing that I normally do. I am just going to do the candle thing for the vibe setting. And yeah, so just quick catch up on the week, on the last 2 weeks maybe. I'd say it like that. Okay, so episodes will be dropping every 2 weeks on a Monday. That's the first part that we need to say it. The episodes will drop on YouTube at The Ordinary Connection. That's the name of the channel. You can find us. If you are here, please make sure to like, subscribe. If you are seeing one of the clips on Instagram or TikTok, make sure to follow on those platforms as well. Okay, it will be appreciated. It is something that is going to hopefully be for the long run, because that's what this is about, while keeping it simple. Okay, so today's episode is kind of going to be how we can tie the toxic traits conversation that we've been having, the gaslighting conversation, excuse me, that we started with. Those are going to be the things that we kind of focus on. And in focusing on that, we're going to kind of move forward to how do we do better? How do we be better? Okay, because obviously when it comes to how we deal with certain things, and victim mentality and perfectionism, I think is probably out of all of the toxic traits that I have already spoken about, even with the next episode that is to come on anger and indifference, I think it's probably some of the most common, because it's very easy, in my opinion, to fall into the trap that is victim mentality, or the trap that is perfectionism, for very, very different reasons. I don't even think they are the same reasons, but the reason that they are together is just because of the fact that I think it's gonna work. It's gonna work more easily to put some examples and stuff in, and kind of highlight certain things that maybe we do, certain things that maybe we feel other people do to us, and kind of work around that and see how we can, maybe if not remove, try and navigate it a little bit better from a better place of understanding. Because that, out of everything within toxic traits, I think these 2 are probably going to be the most common that we bump into, because manipulation might be something that we all experience, but this is more what we are feeling inside of ourselves, not so much necessarily what it is that the world is actually doing to us, if that makes any sense. So yeah, so as always, we start the first bit with definitions. Okay, and in order to start with definitions, the first definition we're going to go with is victim mentality. So victim mentality is a state of mind where individuals perceive themselves as constantly being victimized or oppressed, often blaming external factors for their circumstances. Right, so that's the first one. Second one, perfectionism. Perfectionism is the pursuit of flawlessness and setting excessively high standards, often accompanied by harsh self-criticism and fear of failure. Right, now the reason that this is important is probably going to be because of what do these things look like. Okay, because generally, even once we have a definition and we can understand what the word means, it's also important to understand when we use it and how we use it in kind of communication, because that is the point, right? You're not going to tell anybody you feel like a victim just for them to punish you, because that's not what it's about, right? So examples of victim mentality would be, an easy one is blaming other people, right? That's like the simplest base form of what victim mentality is. But There is a feeling of powerlessness because you don't believe that you can change anything. You don't believe that you can do anything to change, whether it be your situation, whether it be a person, whether it be fix your relationship, whether it be resolve fights in your family, those types of things. So, examples of victim mentality. A tendency, we tend to blame people. That's like the easiest baseline definition of it, because that's what we know victim mentality as. And whether that is on our side as individuals or as what we experience from other people, that kind of becomes like the easiest way to understand victim mentality. But there's a lot more to it, because if you think about it, it is also a mindset, it is a thought pattern, it is a belief system. And if we go back to the definition, that's going to be kind of the easiest part. It's a state of mind where individuals perceive themselves. It's not so much that it is that way. It's just for you as an individual, your perception of reality, the way that you're going through life, what it is that you're feeling. Those are the things that you are experiencing that fundamentally tie themselves to you. And based on how you interact with those things, that's going to dictate how people are receiving this quote unquote victim mindset of yours. So there is a tendency to where people feel powerless. Like that's a fairly simple one as well. The problem with that is there also tends to be a little bit of negativity worked into that. So we have blaming other people, we have feeling powerless, we have negativity, but in turn, all of those things also tie to you not taking responsibility. And it's not necessarily that you have to take responsibility. That's not what it's about. It's just there's a tendency to not. And because of the potential lack of accountability that I'm talking about, there also tends to be this resent or silent resent that starts building inside of you. Because why can nobody understand me? Why is nobody focusing on making me feel better? Because this is what I'm experiencing and this is how I feel. Right. So with that, there also then tends to be, and probably one of the biggest things, and I don't think it's an intentional thing. Out of everything in victim mentality, I don't think this is the intentional part. There tends to be a lack of empathy that kind of comes across, because it's very difficult to understand somebody and the position that they are trying to explain to you if you can't even put yourself in their shoes, because it doesn't make sense why what they went through was so difficult for them. That's an indirect thought that is being communicated when we are dismissive, when we are divisive, and we're trying to create tension between ourselves and other people. But and I can't stress this enough. 9 times out of 10, being vulnerable can include aggression, but vulnerability is not aggressive. If you can hold on to that, then you'll see how it ties into everything else. But then, if we branch out of the examples of victim mentality and then we talk about the perfectionism side of things, it's also now a matter of how do these. So with perfectionism, this is now about you. So victim mentality, certain times you can't change your situation, you can't do anything about what it is that you're going through. Your action is not something that is powerful and important and of value. And then there's that fear of failure. So almost, if you imagine imposter syndrome occurring while you are trying to change all of these things, that kind of becomes fairly difficult. But now with perfectionism, there's this perfect way to do something. There's this perfect way to be yourself, this perfect way to move forward. And the problem that you have is, with a lot of us, we tend to say we know who we are. I am this person, I've been this person my whole life. But does that not mean that you are fundamentally basing who it is that you are on who it is that you were, on the experiences that you've already lived through, you've already made decisions about, you've already made choices through. And now you don't really know who it is that you are today, and you don't know how the people in your life are going to affect you from today onward. And that then becomes a very, very important thing as well, because when it comes to you as a person, if you have this perfect mold, I need to do that, I need to have a job, I need to study, I need to have a kid by 31, I need to be married by 35, I need to do this, I need to do that. And regardless of what those numbers or goals or mindset shifts and when they happen in your life occur, it doesn't necessarily mean that just because you don't attain those things, you are wrong or broken or not perfect. Because perfection is also something that can be a very daunting thing because of how it happens in your head versus how it shows itself in reality. Because being perfect is not necessarily a lack of mistake. That's not necessarily what being perfect means, not in terms of people, because people are not without blemishes, they are not without faults, and that is what tends to make them perfect. It tends to be the traumas in the people around us, it tends to be the fears, the faults, the failings that other people have gone through that make them important to us, because we also then get given opportunities to actually be vulnerable. And that's then what becomes very, very important. But if we go out of that and we transition and we talk about the why, and in my head the why of anything tends to kind of break down into advantages and disadvantages, right? What would be the advantage of victim mentality? What would be the advantage of being a perfectionist? Because there are, like I said, at each point that we talk about a toxic trait, it's not that one is good or bad or better than a different toxic trait. It's not. They are all both good and bad, but for very, very different reasons. And who they are good and bad to is again another topic in and of itself. Okay, and that's the part that we need to understand, because if you think about victim mentality, sympathy can help. Someone showing you sympathy when you are going through something that is difficult can be a very easy way for you to understand that this person cares about you. But the problem that you have is questions like, how long do you stay within that thing? How long do you hold on to it? Because also, at some point, you are a victim of circumstance, and then you aren't anymore because the circumstance happened, the circumstance passed, and now it's a series of your choices that are actually leading to something. And generally, outside of the person experiencing, there's almost a okay, feelings are real even though they aren't facts, right? So I can feel a certain type of way, and that doesn't necessarily mean it is so. But that doesn't invalidate what I'm feeling. Okay, so coming from someone that is kind of more leans towards the logical side of things, that's been something that I've had to learn, because very many times I don't understand emotional people. I don't understand people that make decisions impulsively. I don't understand people that have the ability to make a decision like that. But once you take what you feel and you can actively communicate it to the next person, it makes it, I don't want to say easier, but less confusing. There's a thing that I saw that said, being clear is kind, and being unclear is unkind. Or being decisive is kind, and being indecisive is not kind. And I didn't very much understand it when I read it the first time, because yes, sometimes it's very nice to say, this is what I'm feeling, this is why I'm feeling it. But if you are rigid in the way that you think and you don't make space for changes to happen, you're doing a disservice to yourself. You're hurting your own personal growth. And that's then where we bring in the advantages and disadvantages of victim mentality and perfectionism. Because in victim mentality, you're going to get instant gratification from someone else's sympathy, or you're not going to feel guilty or shameful for something that you've done, because when you said, I done it because you done this, the other person just took it and they just accepted it as they are supposed to, because your feelings are your feelings and you're allowed to feel what it is that you feel. Here's the problem, right? We never go back. We tend to lack the going back. And the little thingy that I wrote down that I saw was, in order to validate feelings, you have to listen. But being blamed or told either you always are, you always will be this person, those types of things, they make it difficult to listen because of the fact that they're accusatory. They are blame-filled. Right? Now, that doesn't seem like victim mentality, but it prevents accountability on the side of the person that's saying it. Because if I say you are always the type of person that is aggressive towards me, it can't be true because you are not 100% aggressive. You could be aggressive with me, but when I'm not around, what type of person are you? So maybe it's a matter of I'm triggering something in you, you triggering something in me, and we just don't understand what those triggers are, so we're never dealing with it. Does that kind of make a little bit more sense? Okay. And then feelings are important because it's coming from inside your body and needs to be addressed, but vulnerability isn't aggressive. So that's the side of the coin that I want to kind of hold on to, because that's, in my opinion, what's important. It's not necessarily that we are going through these things and there's something wrong with us. It's everybody has a toxic trait, a series of toxic traits, if we're being a little bit more honest with ourselves. The problem is, it's not our jobs to make other people make sense. It's not our purpose to make other people make sense. Unfortunately, it is your job for you to make sense of yourself to other people. And sometimes, yes, we measure people by how easily they understand us or how easily it is that they can relate to us. Sometimes that just means that we are too close. We are too close to people that have similar or the same life experience as us. And that doesn't necessarily seem like a bad thing, but it doesn't always lead to challenges or to you being challenged to a point or place where you can learn something new about yourself, and thus your self-growth changes, slows down, becomes something different. And that's the piece of the coin that we need to maybe be a little bit more mindful of, right? So in terms of the advantages and stuff, like I'm saying, it can help with alleviating the feelings of guilt or shame or accountability. Those things now don't need to be there in the event of victim mentality. But the problem that you have is that you also are getting attention. So you are also getting validated. Someone showing you sympathy and someone paying attention to you can feel like the exact same thing. So if you just learn, oh, I just need to be the victim and then people are going to pay attention to me because my needs are greater than other people's needs, there we've entered toxic territory. At that moment, where that becomes a part of your character and the way that you interact with the world, that's where those traits or examples of what and how victim mentality can show itself, the negativity, the blaming other people, the dismissal of accountability, those types of things now start becoming character traits because they are familiar, and you also give up on your ability to change those things because there's always work to be done. Unfortunately, when you're working on yourself, there's always going to be something that you're great at and something that you suck at. If you just focus on the things that you're great at, you're not paying attention. Go back to episode number 2, fundamental attribution error, because then you'll understand, because that's what it's about, right? But then with the disadvantages, then we're going to talk about the powerlessness and all of that, because that was the other side. You tend to pretend to be resilient. And I know that sounds weird for me to say, but victim mentality is not equal to resilience. Being a victim can help you build resilience. Yes, going through things, going through trauma, that 9 times out of 10 builds very resilient people. It builds very hyper-independent people on average as well, but that's also fine. That's a completely different thing. For me, it's a matter of, if we look at it from a place of, if you feel powerlessness and thus you take it upon yourself to stand by yourself, I don't think that that agrees with the fact that you are powerless. Because it's not. A lot of people will measure themselves by what they can do by themselves, but they don't actually want to do stuff by themselves. And it's not a fair measure. How far you can how far you can pull the train, how far you can push the car, how far you can roll the boulder up a hill. It speaks to strength, but it doesn't speak to the beating that you can put yourself through. And I know that sounds weird, but that is where resilience lives, in my opinion. Resilience is not about things being hard. It's about your plan, your goal being more important than the difficulty of what it is that you're going through. So, because you're not taking accountability in victim mentality with regards to what it is that you're going through, what it is that you're feeling, what it is that's happening to you, the circumstances of your own life, and your role in them, because that's not then happening, right? It tends to strain the dynamics in relationships, especially the relationships with people that are a little bit deeper than where it is everyone else's bonds with you are. Some people don't want to be close to you. Some people don't want to build a bond with you. Some people don't want to take a bond past a specific place with you. Accept that, acknowledge it, feel it, live in it. It's a thing that's going to happen many a time. People, some people call it the friend zone. Some people call it the bestie zone. The whatever. It doesn't matter. All of those different zones, those limitations that people experience, they are because of the fact that we put up boundaries between certain feelings, and we don't give people those feelings if they don't make it past that boundary, or we don't deem them worthy of being past that boundary. So in this situation, we have victim mentality or even perfectionism that can stand in the way of stopping you from being your imperfect, problematic self, because within your victim mentality, there are things that are warranted. There are things of value in the way that you have a conversation about it. It's just, you need to be very strong to have a conversation with someone that is blaming you for something and not let your ego, your emotional state, your mental state, and not let those things get involved. But that is so difficult. That is such a difficult thing to do. And I think a lot of people tend to be able to see it on the outside, but they can't see it within themselves, because we tend to be a little bit more defensive or self-absorbed when it's something that we feel is we are the only ones going through it. When it's our emotion and I'm sad and you happy, I'm gonna make it about my sadness because you are happy. But that's not supposed to be what should be happening. You can be happy while I am sad. I can be sad while you are happy, and we can still fill the same space. You understand? Okay, and then so it puts a strain on the relationship dynamics in terms of a disadvantage of what it is that victim mentality can lead to. But I think the bigger danger is the resentment that we don't ever talk about. The things that we feel and the things that we are expressing, the minute that dismissive energy kicks in and shuts us down, we lock up, and we don't tend to want to talk. We don't tend to want to be open. We don't tend to want to be vulnerable. And that's the burden that it kind of applies to everything. So yeah, and then if we move over to perfectionism, perfectionism is great because it can drive you to excel, it can motivate you, it can keep you focused, it can keep you steadfast. It helps plenty of people. But the problem is, perfect is very unrealistic. Perfect will stay unrealistic, because whether it is the perfect partner, whether it is the perfect job, whether it is the perfect business, whether it is the perfect you, whether it is the perfect friendship circle, the perfect family, those words don't tend to make as much sense when we actually sit and look at it. Because even if you took something as simple as your family has an experience of itself, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, uncles, aunts, cousins, everybody has individual experiences of what it means to be family. And sometimes those are great. And sometimes those are even congruent. They agree with one another. The problem is on the back end, when those things start changing, when the fun side of relationship dynamics, which is you were that cousin for me at that point, and now you're not that cousin anymore. You as a sibling were like this, and now we like this, and it's just things have changed. People are going to go through that permanently, from day one to day dead. That's going to always be a thing that happens because we are changing. I think a very important part to maybe what I would refer to as the importance of perfection is understanding that the perfection is in the break, and whether you're going to do the classic cliche of quoting kintsugi, which is the Japanese art of repairing porcelain or pottery with gold or silver, whether you're going to go that route or you're going to talk about perfect imperfections, those are going to be the types of things that define who it is that people are to me. And it's always going to be the most important part of who it is that. Okay. So then, with the disadvantages of perfectionism, they, how do you how do you be the perfect partner and show vulnerability? How do you be the perfect sibling, the perfect son, the perfect daughter, the perfect friend? How do you be that thing without being vulnerable, without actually connecting, without taking a bond to the next level? Not because of the fact that that's what you want, but merely because of the fact that that is the type of person that you are. If it wasn't a chess game, if it wasn't a complicated move that you needed to make, it wasn't something you needed to think about, if you could just literally be the person that you wanted to be, who would that person be? What would that person look like? And why aren't you being that person? Is it because you don't feel that you have the strength, you don't have the capability, you don't have, hell, we can go as simple as saying the funds to be the person that it is that you want to be? Or is there a bigger reason? Is there stuff underneath everything? And that's what all of these conversations about toxic traits are actually about. Remember, it's not whether or not we are toxic. That's not the conversation. We are all toxic because we are all people. That's been established. How we are toxic is not the same. The level to which we are toxic is not the same. The extent within those levels to which we are willing to be toxic is not the same. The justification for that toxicity is not the same. Those are the nuances that make each individual person both important and dangerous. And that's what we lean into. That's what we are trying to lean into. Okay, that's what this is all about. It's taking the experiences that you feel and bringing them out into the real world and not feeling like you're going to be judged because of the fact that, I don't know, you worry that you can't tell these people that they're hurting your feelings. You should. You should, because you should be able to tell people that are important to you that they are doing something that is hurting your feelings, but you should also understand that even though your feelings are being hurt, that might not be their intention. And the difference is between the intention and the outcome is potentially how it's being interpreted. And it could just be an experience-based interpretation. You grew up, this is what you experienced. When kids in school done this to you, when kids in high school done this to you, when friends at varsity done this to you, this is what they meant. Now you're an adult, you've grown, and you don't want anybody to disrespect you. Small little sidebar. I saw one of the most interesting things about respect, and I thought it was a very, very interesting concept. So the post, I think it was on Reddit, if I'm not mistaken. I have no idea who to give credit to, but I will see if I can find it and put it up. So the thing, it was talking about respect, and it said one of the most interesting things about respect is that when we say that word to other people, or especially when we feel disrespected, we don't necessarily understand what is being meant by that word. So when some people say, you are not respecting me, they tend to mean you are not treating me as an authority figure. This is one of the two things that were explained on this post. So you're not treating me as a person of authority. Now that's very interesting, because respect for us, and I'm going to say as a 90s baby, was always immediately given or offered to people that were older than us, and we kind of had to find our voice to realize that, you know what, most people don't actually know what the hell is going on. And it's weird, but it's a thing, and it happens all the time, because what do they say? People are looking for the adultiest adult in the room when there's a problem. And then the second definition of respect, which was probably something that was very, very, I think more times than not, if I've used the word respect, I'm not talking about the authority thing. I'm talking about this. It's that I don't feel you are treating me as a person. And that is such an interesting concept to me. One person is saying, I'm used to being an authority, and based on this thing that I've gotten used to, you as an individual, I am blaming you for not giving me that same authority feeling that everybody else has grown comfortable with me having. That's the one side. But on this end, the recognition of you are not treating me as a person, there are fundamentals that must make those two mindsets different. And I have no idea what they are. So if you have thoughts, please, this is probably one of my favorite little areas of the podcast that I would want to talk about, because I think that would be amazing. But in not being treated as a person, are you saying that you're feeling dismissed? Are you saying that you are not being heard? or you are saying that you are not being felt, that your needs, your wants, your desires are not being anticipated or heard out. There's so many things that need to be unpacked about that. But yeah, I'm leaving that right there and we're going to carry on. Okay, so here in the middle, right, this is becoming one of my favorites, is my music drops. Okay, so today, see, little notebook. Now I'm writing stuff down so that I don't mess it up. Okay, so for today's song drops, we do have 5 again. We are going to start off with Perfectionist by Russ from the Chomp 2.0 album. There's a line in that song. He says, I know it's not your job to affirm what I believe. And little bit of a oldie from Russ, because there's a lot of new music that he's dropped because he works like a warrior. But Perfectionist by Russ, lovely, lovely, lovely song, meets trend, meets theme. I'm gonna try that. I don't know how long I'm gonna keep it up. Okay, and then Human by Ram Gold from the Thicker Than Water album. That's the 2021 album, with the latest album being the U Street Anthology, which is it's a brilliant album. I fucks with it, man. And then number 3, I don't want to say an unknown artist because it's also weird to be unknown and refer to other people as unknown, but maybe a smaller time artist is Leo Waters, Smoke and Mirrors. Beautifully vulgar. You know, I love me some vulgar music. And then track number 4 is Words by Imok. I'll put the picture up so that you can see it. And that's from the Meadow Lake Demos that EP that dropped. Probably one of my favorite artists for the year, and I can't even tell you why. It is literally just, his music has been speaking to pieces of me that I didn't even know existed, because I've shut myself down to things that I felt, things that I feel, because I don't think that they're allowed. My own little toxic trait. So yeah. And then the 5th one is an oldie, Halfway Off the Balcony by Big Sean from the 2017 I Decided album. I have been going to back to old music, and I've thoroughly been enjoying it. So yeah, that's where we are currently. That is the 5 song drops for this week. Okay, so we're gonna tie perfectionism and victim mentality with toxic traits, and then we're gonna conclude and wrap things up, because these quick episodes in my head, because you guys are not telling your friends about this, because you guys are not making more noise, because that's what I really, really need from you guys. We're taking it slow. We're not trying to drown anybody with taking up too much of their time, and we're just going with things as they are, right? So perfectionism and victim mentality, they can contribute to toxic. They can contribute, not will, not must. They can contribute to toxic dynamics in a relationship, but that is more because of the fact that they can affect personal development. Hinder it, speed it up, slow it down, make it non-existent. That's then the issue that these two kind of have, right? And then the problem with perfectionism is, as important and as helpful and hopeful as it can be, it can lead to rigid thinking, which means that in terms of changing your mindset, changing who it is that you are, working on certain things and developing the nuance that is your bonds, your relationships, and not like anything else you've ever experienced, that will always take work. Okay, that's something that I will stand on until the day that I die, because I don't believe relationships are the same. Excuse me, not friends, not family, not partners. And then with victim mentality and perfectionism, actually, if we talk about it, they tend to be roadblocks kind of in our bonds. They stand in the way, and it's frustrating. Jesus, it's frustrating. It's such a frustrating experience, because if they just weren't there, we'd be fine, right? No. It's not. That's the meat of the burger. That's the important part that differentiates, or maybe to be more accurate, it's the garnish of the burger, because all burgers have meat, you know? And that is what makes your bonds unique. That's what makes your bonds individual. And that's what it's then about. That's what it becomes and stays about. Okay? But yeah, the rigid thinking in perfectionism, dangerous. The blaming thing um, in victim mentality, highly problematic. I agree and I acknowledge that, and that's why these things are toxic. But victim mentality could also just be an expression of someone that's not used to being heard. Perfectionism could just be an expression of someone that had a lot of pressure put on them to never ever make a mistake, else life would end, survival would be impossible, and understanding that is what it's about. That's the importance of how understanding, or what maybe understanding these toxic traits is actually about. But yeah, that is that. I think that's pretty much our little episode. We focus on what it is that we do, what it is that we go through, and why it is that we go through those things, and hopefully it takes us a little bit forward. Okay, so that has been another episode on The Ordinary Connection. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe if you found value in this. Okay, if you had anything that stood out to you, please let me know, whether it be on any of the social media platforms or even in the comments on YouTube. Do that. There also will be, I'm working on getting the audio stuff to happen weekly as well. I will post the YouTube videos as audio so that that can be kind of done, because that's apparently what podcasts are supposed to be. But yeah, until next time, remember that it's ordinary to be extraordinary. Thank you very much.